the 2020 FutureFest Talkback series for Before Lesbians, which is currently streaming as part of this year's virtual FutureFest. My name is Adi McFarland, and I'm here with Shauna Camacho, and we had the great pleasure of playing Charlotte and Vivian in this production of Before Lesbians. We hope you've had a chance to check it out, but if not, the production will continue to stream through Thursday evening, so you still have plenty of time to do so. We're pleased to be joined by our director, Kim Warwick, and of course, the playwright, Elana Gartner, who will be answering any of your questions you all may have. So send them our way in the chat, and we'll get through as many of them as we can. So without any further ado, Elana, welcome to FutureFest 2020. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're going to start off with the first question here. And really, we just want to know, why don't you tell us a little bit about where this play came from?
So I took a class at Oberlin College many years ago. And it was on queer history. And there was an article that I read by Carol Smith Rosenberg called The Female, the Female World of Love and Ritual. And it talked a lot about the letters that women wrote between each other and that allowed them to have relationships with each other in secret, particularly while men were at war and in the 19th century in particular. And it really stuck with me, but I didn't write the play then. I think I wasn't ready. I think maybe I wasn't mature enough. I don't know, but I didn't write the play then. And it sort of, I knew I was going to write a play about it at some point, and it stuck with me for 18 or 19 years. And when the shooting at the Pulse Club happened in Florida in 2016, I think that it just sort of woke that part up, and I started writing the script very, very quickly, and it was, I mean, I wrote it in 7 weeks, and the characters came out, they were like fully realized. And it wasn't until later that I sort of realized that the awakening probably happened because of the Pulse shooting. But I had been very affected by it. I was very upset about it. I was completely aware that this was connected to the Oberlin class, though, because I went down to my basement. I still had the article. It was amazing. And I did a lot of research, the facts about romantic relationships are all true. The facts about women, getting into the medical field at that time, that's all true. Women becoming more economically independent. The word lesbians was not even a thing until the 1880s because men started implementing it as a way to sort of get back at women who had transgressed during the Civil War and had started having relationships with women in a more open manner. And so when they returned from the Civil War and women wanted to annul their relationships because they had found these life partners that were other women, men were rather upset about that, and women were more economically independent. So they found a way to label these relationships so that it was taboo. And that's where the word lesbian came from. So that's how I came up with the name Before Lesbians, and that's where the inspiration came from.
Well, we'll throw a question Kim's way here. how did you approach this show directing in this style? Because of your background, I mean, it's an opera, and you've done plays and musicals, but a stage reading, kind of an in-between sort of thing we had going on. We had our books, but it was staged, and so how did you come to this show?
Well, I originally came to this show because John Roth Smith sent me a message saying, we're doing FutureFest virtually, and there is this show that you need to direct. You're going to love it. Let me send it to you. And I said, well, okay. She's a very good friend of mine, so I trust her. And I read it, and I said, I texted her back, and I said, I absolutely love the show. How am I going to do this virtually? How am I, I don't know if you can do this show without the two ladies in the same room, because so much of it has to do with their relationship that without that really reading true, I don't know how to do justice to the show. And she said, well, I have these two actresses that already are in each other's bubbles, and they're very, very good. And so that was the beginning of it. So I thought, okay, good, at least we can be in the same room. But it was very interesting because at first we were trying to keep it very strictly a reading. And it very quickly became clear that that wasn't going to work for any of us. I mean, the ladies were up on stage going, but I have to do something. And I was out in the audience going, yes, I know, but it's supposed to be a reading. And we finally went, okay, that doesn't mean we can't move. And once we freed ourselves up and said, we can't move all the way across the stage, but we can move, then everything kind of started falling into place. And then I started using my instincts that I have when I direct anything, and I stopped trying to put myself in a box. And we just kind of, made sure that we had music stands where we needed them. It became very clear that there were a few scenes that absolutely had to be memorized, that there was no way for it to read if the books is, because they were sitting on the chaise lounge with the book here, and it was, one of these, where are we looking kind of thing. So that through the rehearsal process, it became clear, I didn't have to say, I think we need to rehearse this. As a matter of fact, a couple of times I said, well, there's another one, And we all went, yeah, that's another one that needs to be memorized. So in the final analysis, it was pretty much like directing anything else once we started making theater. So I see a question.
Yeah. So for the actor and the director, why was this play so important to you? Well, from my standpoint, we were a part of the original reading committee for FutureFest, and we fell in love with the script at the beginning. So I think we felt a connection to it the entire time. So it became really important for us to have the opportunity to see it through to the end, to this point. So that was really important to me personally.
Well, I've been on the FutureFest play reading committee for the last 2 years, and this play, was by far my favorite one that I'd read over, and I've read, we get 300 plays submitted into the festival. And I'm with Shauna, it was just, the characters were so real, and it just needed to be something I needed to be a part of. So that was what it was for me.
Mm-hmm.
And for me,
yes.
For me, I've always been an LGBTQ ally, and I have one of my daughters is part of the community. And so when I read something that spoke to me about a time when there was no name for this relationship, there was no name, there was no legitimacy at first, and then to see how the relationship evolves in the same way any relationship evolves was a lovely thing to see portrayed, to kind of make us all realize that we hear sometimes how, why are we seeing so many LGBTQ people? Well, it's because you're not paying attention. clearly love has been love all along, and it's so the fact that historically we see that these relationships were always there, they just didn't have a name for it, and naturally it was men that gave them the name for it. So
we do have a question here from Saul Kaplan. What are your thoughts about eliminating the husband characters and making this just a two-hander?
I don't think that would work. I mean, I think that I think it's important. I mean, unfortunately, you kind of have to have the Henry character, and I think it's important to have that first scene because it really sets the groundwork for how they meet, and I think the place from which they have to grow. And I think that part of where they have to grow from is the patriarchy and the sort of societal norms, the heteronorms. Ooh, can't say that word today. And I think that if I removed them, it would also remove a lot of the conflict towards the end of the play, which I don't want to give away because I don't know if everybody has seen it. But I will just say that I think that I don't feel like the stakes would be as high. I think you remove stakes. I know that this is these are not it's not a show that is male driven, and I think that's perfectly fine because there are lots of shows that are, and women are sidelined. So this is a show that men are sidelined.
I want to take it.
All right, we have another question from Tay Kaplan. Helen Sneed made some interesting comments, especially about anachronistic language. Do you have a response to that? She was the adjudicator that gave a reflection at the end.
Yeah, I think that she had some good observations about, some of the language probably needs to be looked at to make sure that it's keeping within the 19th century language. I think that she's right about that.
So, Elana, after you've seen the show in this format, I know you've had a few readings of the play in the past, but seeing it this way on stage, costumes, is there anything that you would change about it, or anything that you saw that you're like, oh yeah, like that worked? Way to go, me, for writing
I mean, it was so lovely to see so much of it come to life. We were talking before we started about how emotional it was. You guys brought so much emotion to the characters, and I think that that's something that I really haven't seen before as much, and intensity. Obviously the costumes and the props really helped a lot to just sort of bring them into the world. And so I think that, in terms of changing the script, I don't think that there's a lot that I would change in terms of the script at this point. There were a couple things that I was like, maybe, but, I think, this one is pretty done. Like I said, like maybe a couple of the words here and there. But I really do think, I think this one is done. I do think that, I think this just, it went out, and yeah, I don't feel like I have to return to it very much.
So Sarah Kaplan has a question. Have you read David Mamet's Boston Marriage?
It's funny, when I was when I was writing this, I ordered that play, and it took a really, really long time to arrive. And by the time that it arrived, I decided I didn't want to read it. Both because I actually don't really like David Mamet, but because I also felt like I probably will read it at some point, but I haven't read it. I felt, Boston Marriage is something that happened a lot later. It was not applicable here. For those of you who do not know, Boston marriages were relationships between women that were, they were women living together, and they were just sort of identified as, they were called Boston marriages, but they were obviously lesbians. And because they wouldn't call it lesbians, they would call them Boston marriages. So I have not read it. I decided not, it was an active decision not to.
Okay, we have a question from Tay Kaplan. She says, who do you see as the audience for this play?
I think that this could be for a lot of people. I have had, the great pleasure of having it done at Oberlin by students. And it was, there were students who were watching it. There were alumni who were watching it. I think Oberlin is a great place for it to be because it was the origin of the idea, and not so far from you guys. It was done in Tennessee, and it will be done later this month, also streaming through another organization in Reno, Nevada. So I think I think it can be for anybody. Because it is streaming, I think it's finding a larger audience right now. More people are watching it, and not just because they're friends with me or because they're relatives of me, but I'm learning more about who would be interested in this. I'm learning that more people are moved about and interested in hearing about LGBTQ history. I think that there is a fairly evident crowd that this may not be appropriate for, but I think that there is a very interesting crowd of multi-generations that is interested. There are people who, at least 3 generations I know are watching this right now.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a comment from Dawn Rocksmith. She just said, hello, ladies. So hi, Dawn.
Hi, Dawn.
For joining us today. So Elana, another question that we had, I think once you live in it for a little while and you're on stage and you're working through it, how do you envision the costuming for the show? There's a lot of quick scene changes, and we kind of go back and forth very quickly from the time span, goes for 3 years, but we're going into each scene. Do you kind of see it as very simple costuming and just very little changes, or what are you thinking there?
I generally think that kind of thing is mostly up to the director.
Fair enough.
There are a lot of changes. I think the choice that Kim made was the right one, to keep them in the same dresses the whole time. And you guys had the option to change dresses if you wanted to, given that it was a recording, but I think that was a good choice, and I thought that it was very clear between the dresses that, Charlotte was of higher class and Vivian was not.
Oh, that's good to hear.
I read it. So yeah, I was able to figure that out. Yeah, no, I saw that. And that's Kim's cat.
And that is my cat.
All right, so we have another question for anyone involved. Has this experience changed your opinion of the value of virtual productions?
Kim, you want to answer that first?
Sure, because I wasn't really sure at first. I was thinking, how do I do this without an audience? But I think there's a definite future for it. I think it's like Elana said, it's reaching a whole nother audience that it would not reach if we were doing it in the theater. Now, we all miss the energy. There's, that's just how it is. We miss that energy between audience and actors. But we are getting an opportunity to speak to a whole other audience. And here's my cat again. So for me, it helped. It changed my opinion quite a bit.
What about you guys?
It's for sure different doing it this way, because you are used to performing for an audience and getting that energy back, and you're also used to not having it recorded for you to always be able to look back on and see everything, per se, as an actor that does theater. But it is really great still being able to bring art to people and to still bring performances and to keep art alive this way while we hopefully wait for all of this to lift, and we'll eventually go back to normal life, hopefully.
But I think we will probably go back to face-to-face theater with in a combination with streaming. I don't think that we want to lose what we've learned, so I think we can add it. But I think you're right. I'm dying for an audience.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic that I've talked about a lot because of the theater company that I founded during this time. And I think that I think that ultimately where theater is going to end up going is that I think it's realized that there are people out there, that there is an audience out there that they're reaching that they hadn't thought about before, which is the homebound. And they were never trying to reach the homebound. And so I think that, virtual productions or even recorded or streaming productions, I hope theaters will consider how to create hybrid versions of their productions in the future.
I agree.
Let's see, we have a question from David Golden. Can you talk about the choice to have the women arm themselves?
Yeah. The women arming themselves in the second act, I think they needed to do that. I think that was a way for them to really, I feel like that was a pivotal point. They really needed to, it was a way for them to actively change and for them to stand up for themselves and say that they were not going to just sit back and let the war take them over, I guess. It is very unusual for women to have rifles, obviously. But at the same time, things had become so bad at that point that they needed to defend themselves. And so I think that they really needed to figure out how to do that.
So we have a comment here, let me find it now, from Charles Nolan. He said that some of the more private scenes were enhanced by the lack of an audience. So
I think that probably is true.
Yeah. I think that an audience might have felt more uncomfortable if they'd been in the audience, like a live audience. Now, that may also be what we want, for someone to, realize how uncomfortable they might be in that situation. But yeah, I can see that. And confront it so that they understand why they would feel more uncomfortable with that relationship rather than a male-female relationship. But
I also think that if you were in a live situation, that I think people would feel the discomfort more, which I guess is sort of what you were saying.
mm-hmm.
And that's sort of, it's so visceral.
Yeah.
It's so, you want to help them fix things for themselves. You want to, part of what's great about live theater is making the audience feel things really deeply and right. Even if it's uncomfortable. And you want to make sure that, and so I am glad that Charles feels that it was enhanced by the lack of audience, but I also would be very interested to know if that would feel the same or different if you were in person.
Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
I would like to recognize the gentleman that helped us film this.
Yes.
Matt Lackey was amazing in all of the prep work and all the work he did. And he shot, I won't say we, because I sat in an audience in the theater and watched. He used 8 cameras in this thing, and we shot it in one take. So, and that I just can't say enough thank yous to Matt.
Yes, I agree.
So
that was amazing.
Yeah.
We're getting close to be almost out of time, but we do have another comment here from Connie Bloom, who says, I'm involved as audience and have found the streaming plays to be better than I had hoped. This one especially was a very good watching experience.
Thank you, Connie.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you, Connie.
I guess, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, question for Elana. What do you feel like is the next step for the show? Where do you go from here?
Well, so it's going to be going up at Good Luck Macbeth on August 15th. It'll be streaming for a week then as well, with a completely different cast and a different director. This director is going to be from Alaska. So that'll be very interesting. I don't know anything about that, but I'm going to be doing interviews for that too. That's what I know. So it'll be August 15th through the 22nd. And that's what's happening for that show. I am the artistic director of Four Walls Theater, which is a theater that I found, a socially responsible theater that I founded during the pandemic. And we have our next show going up in October, which we are currently reading scripts for. And I'm a mom, so I have to show this for my daughter because she made these for me.
Yeah.
And I know she's watching, and my son is watching too. Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Naomi. So that's, just trying to get through the pandemic.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you guys putting this out. This was an amazing experience, and I know that it was a lot of work. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And I know that I can speak on behalf of all 3 of us to say that it was just an absolute pleasure to be a part of your show. So
thank you.
Thank you for writing it.
Yeah.
Just as a reminder for everyone that you can still access the show by going to www.daytonplayhouse.org and clicking the ticket link. And it will be available to stream until midnight Thursday night. And so thank you again, Elana, for joining us today. Thanks, Kim, for being here and all your work you did on the production. And since this is our final Talkback, final live streaming thing we're doing for FutureFest 2020, we want to thank all of our 3 playwrights whose plays were seen over the last 3 weeks, Kimberly Scheimer, Kevin Cerrone, and of course, Elana Gartner, and for joining us during these weekly talkbacks and spending the time to do the playwright dialogues as well, which included our other FutureFest finalists, Barbara Blumenthal-Ehrlich, William Cameron, and Shanti Reinhardt. So a shout out to them as well. Thank you for being part of all of this. And you can check out those playwright dialogues and these talkbacks on the Dayton Playhouse YouTube channel. We need to thank our previous year's adjudicators who helped us out. They did the thoughts and the reflections before, during, and after the shows were aired. Peter Felicia, Ashley Rodbro, David Finkel, Helen Sneed, and Eleanor Speart. So thank you for your participation as well. Thank you to all the actors, directors, editors, crews for your work and dedication over the past few months. It's definitely a labor of love for the theater that we all did. So, and a special thank you to Matt Lindsay and the FutureFest committee for finding a path forward as we have tried to do theater in the time of COVID. And most importantly, thank you to everyone watching and who joined us on this journey. The Dayton Playhouse has been doing theater for over 60 seasons, and we could not have done this without all of you. And we'll continue to be doing theater no matter what the format. So your support means the world to us. Please stay tuned for the announcement of our upcoming season. We hope to see you all back at the theater soon. Stay safe. Be well.